60, The Answer.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So we're nearing, it seems, the completion of the Mueller investigation and the submission of his report to the Department of Justice for the Attorney General then to, at minimum, summarize for public consumption. But, of course, Adam Schiff, he's the new chairman of the House Intel Committee. He's a Democrat who represents Area 51, sort of an amateur conspiracy theorist as a side hustle in addition to being a member of Congress.
Yeah, and he was on this week on Sunday.
Yeah, he had this to say about the prospect of the full report not being released to the public, what he would do if that was the decision Attorney General Barr made.
Well, we will obviously subpoena the report. We will bring Bob Mueller in to testify before Congress. We will take it to court if necessary. And in the end, I think the department understands they're going to have to make this public. I think Barr will ultimately understand that as well.
And Jonathan Turley, who spoke on behalf of William Barr at his confirmation hearing, was on with Michael Smerconish on CNN over the weekend. He had this to say about his friend, Bill Barr, and what he thinks Barr will do with respect to the release of the report.
You can take it to the bank what he said. He's going to try to disclose as much as possible. Does that mean he's going to do a Comey? No. You know, he is a really straight shooting prosecutor. He's friends with Mueller, you know, and they are cut from the same bolt in that sense. So I think that he's going to try to get as much out as possible. But under the law, it says that he supplies a summary as to what was stated. Now, Michael, as you know, that's not going to satisfy anyone, no matter how fulsome that summary may be. The Democrats in the House may then try to subpoena the whole report and or bring in Mueller.
Which is exactly what Schiff said he was willing to do. Now, Turley, law professor at George Washington University, also gave his own summary of what he thinks the report will contain.
But now comes word that Mueller is finishing up. So doesn't the absence of additional indictments against Stone suggest, as the president would say, no collusion?
Well, it does. I mean, you have to, you know, call them as you see them. There is no evidence thus far of collusion between the Trump campaign or President Trump and the Russians in hacking these computer systems. And moreover, it's really quite unlikely, right? If you were a KGB spy master, would you really collude with Donald Trump and put yourself one tweet away from destruction on perhaps the most secret operation in its recent history? The answer is no. They wouldn't do that. Would you hold a hyper-sensitive meeting at Trump Tower with half the media downstairs and not actually produce the evidence promised and instead talk about adoptions? No. The most obvious explanation is probably the right one, that there was not collusion in the hacking of the system. Now, what appears to be the case is that Stone wanted to get access to this information. That's not illegal. Journalists, political operatives, even academics all try to get their hands on material like this, whether it's whistleblowing or whether it came from one source or another. There's nothing illegal in that. And so I think that so far we're one collusion short of making that case.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, a contributing editor at National Review, nationalreview.com. Andy, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Turley went on to say with Smerconish that Mueller has shown more collusion between Manafort and Ukraine than anything resembling collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Is that your assessment at this juncture as well?
Yeah, it is, but I think, Dan, that the whole premise of this is wildly distorted. I think basically what they've done is the more I look into this, they have taken what was a thriving business of political consultancy and lobbying that eminences from both parties were involved in during the 25-year utopian Washington euphoria that Russia was just a normal country, a great place for Americans to do business, a great place to ally with when our political interests lined up. And then at around 3 o'clock in the morning or so on November 9th, 2016, when Hillary Clinton lost the election and the Democrats needed a reason to explain it, the music stopped and Russia was suddenly the Cold War villain, and anyone who was related to Trump who did business with it was now a clandestine agent of the Kremlin rather than a grubby political lobbyist. And that's what they've crafted this entire collusion narrative out of.
And you've said from the beginning that this was never about indicting the president. This is about impeachment. So with respect to what could possibly be included in the Mueller report based on what we know that's publicly available, do you see anything that could provide the basis for a rational argument for impeachment, or is it going to be the posture that they don't have what they want from Mueller, so they'll get into process and argue for the next several months, getting into the throes of the 2020 cycle about complete disclosure from Trump's attorney general?
Yeah, nothing that would be legitimately high crimes and misdemeanors in the nature of impeachable offenses. That won't stop the Democrats from doing it, because I think this has been political from the beginning. It's striking, as I've been predicting for a long time, the difference between how things go when the media Democrat complex is the breeze at your back rather than the wind at your face. We had 2 years of Republicans controlling 3 committees in the House, demanding disclosure from the Justice Department of all kinds of information derived from FISA surveillance warrants against Trump campaign advisors and the like. The media basically laughed that whole thing off. The Democrats said it was a clown show that was designed to distract from the more important Mueller investigation, and nobody seemed to care, including President Trump, frankly, when the Justice Department and the FBI simply ignored Congress. So now the shoe is on the other foot. They're going to want the Mueller report, even though, number one, the special counsel regulations say that it's supposed to be a confidential report from the special counsel to the attorney general. Number two, if a person is not charged by the Justice Department, it's against Justice Department policy to broadcast the evidence about that person. And three, Mueller's investigation overarchingly is a counterintelligence investigation, which is supposed to be classified, which means it's never supposed to see the light of day. But now, we're going to get all kinds of demands that everything be disclosed, and the media will be right behind it.
I just want to put an exclamation point on what you just said about against Department of Justice policy to discuss somebody who is not being prosecuted. And that's Barr certainly made reference to that being done in the past by Jim Comey with respect to Hillary Clinton during his confirmation hearing, suggesting that he is going to follow Department of Justice protocol, whereas other senior officials previously have not.
Yeah, well, look, Rod Rosenstein Rosenstein being the Deputy Attorney General, at least for the moment, he ran the Mueller investigation for the better part of 2 years, from the time he appointed Mueller in May 17th of 2017. And of course, that appointment was 9 days after Rosenstein had authored a memorandum justifying the firing of FBI Director James Comey because he spoke publicly about the evidence against Hillary Clinton, an uncharged person. So it would be ironic if the same Justice Department that fired an FBI director or called for the firing of an FBI director over that offense would now suddenly decide that that's no big deal and we can now turn over all the files against somebody who's not charged criminally.
And Rod Rosenstein, he's leaving, March 14th? So this should come out, don't you think, before he leaves?
It's hard to say. I don't know that I've ever thought that Mueller is acting on anybody's clock except his own. Now, I've heard some credible suggestions that he's really ready to release the report. I thought that he's got to have been winding down for a long time because a lot of these investigations are being transferred to other components of the Justice Department. He's staffing down. He's allowing cooperating witnesses or ostensibly people who would be in that position to get sentenced, which you usually don't do as a prosecutor. You wait until they testify in whatever big proceeding you're building to, if you're building to something big. So there have been a lot of signs for a long time that we're a lot closer to the end than the beginning. And there's been some credible reporting that he was ready to push this report out and has only been delayed because the president's going to be in Asia for the better part of a week, so maybe they'll wait till next week. But I think the end is near. I think it's coming.
On the topic of indicia of collusion, how about this story, including that's been highlighted by John Solomon over at The Hill, who's done some good reporting in this topic area, that Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intel Committee, met with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson at the Aspen Security Conference last July. Well, since we're supposed to construe these people running into each other in the most suspicious way possible, the way that Jeff Sessions running into the Russian ambassador to the U.S. at a Heritage Foundation function at the convention is to be construed in the light least favorable to Jeff Sessions. What about this meeting between Schiff and GPS founder Glenn Simpson? Does that call into question Adam Schiff's impartiality, a pursuit of the truth as House Intel Committee chairman?
Yeah, well, I never expect any of these political committees to be on a search for the truth. They're on the search for political advantage for the most part. But I've never accused and wouldn't accuse Schiff of committing espionage because he's playing politics. And that's been my objection, Dan, all along to the word collusion. If you're going to tell me that we're investigating conspiracy to commit cyber espionage with the Kremlin, then if you've got evidence of that, I think that's a very serious matter. Otherwise, collusion, as we've discussed a number of times, is just concerted activity. The three of us are colluding by having this conversation.
Uh-oh.
And it doesn't mean that we're violating any law. And if we're going to talk about, just connections and people working with other people in the context of campaigns, there's an awful lot of evidence that the Clinton campaign and people who were attached to it worked with elements of the Ukrainian government to undermine the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is what people do in these situations, and the United States government is as guilty of it as any other government, including trying to influence the outcome of politics in Russia. So, I have no problem condemning any of this stuff because I don't like the idea of inviting of people on our side inviting foreign governments to meddle in our elections. My objection is that the rules of the game seem to have changed the day after Trump was elected president, and what everybody kind of acknowledged as grubby lobbying and scummy politics before the 2016 presidential election is suddenly now supposed to be seen as if people are clandestine operatives of the Kremlin. That's what I think is ridiculous.
He is Andy McCarthy, former chief assistant U.S. attorney in Manhattan, contributing editor at National Review. His latest piece you want to check out at nationalreview.com. If working with Moscow is collusion, it's a bipartisan offense. Andy, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
You too.
And he joined us on our